David woke up that morning just like every other, slowly, cautiously, as though testing each limb to make sure it still remembered how to work. His knees ached, not from any injury, just from age. His feet, stiff and unfeeling, dragged across the wooden floor like dead weights. The bedroom was quiet, save for the soft creak of the bed and his own breath, slightly heavier than it used to be. He sat on the edge of the mattress, hands gripping the edge for support, and let out a sigh. It wasn't just tiredness. It was a silent resignation to the weakness, to the unsteadiness, to the subtle fear of falling again. The porch stairs had taught him that lesson just weeks ago. A small misstep, a sudden tumble, and a lingering bruise on both body and pride. But that morning would be different. He didn't know it yet, couldn't possibly, but something was about to shift. Not in the world, not in the weather, but inside him. Deep in the fibers of his muscles and the core of his strength, something ancient and powerful was stirring. The will to fight back. As David shuffled into the kitchen, his wife Marlene was already pouring warm water into 2 mugs. She glanced up, reading his sluggish posture instantly. "I was reading something last night," she said softly, sliding a mug across to him. About how breakfast, just one meal, can change everything. David chuckled. "Unless that breakfast is a time machine, I don't see how." But Marlene didn't smile. "They say eating the right thing before 8 a.m. can delay muscle aging by up to 10 years. He blinked. 10 years? He echoed. "With a meal?" She nodded. "Not a miracle, just food, science-backed. A simple, everyday dish that helps your muscles rebuild, especially your legs." He sat down, fingers wrapping around the warm mug, a curious seed planted in his mind. That day, they didn't skip breakfast. For the first time in months, David peeled 2 eggs from a simmering pot. He remembered the article saying that eggs weren't just convenient. They were packed with leucine, vitamin D, and B12, not just for energy, for rebuilding, reconnecting brain and muscle, strengthening the nerves. He ate slowly, almost ceremoniously. The yolk was rich, familiar, like something his body had forgotten it needed. And the days that followed, they became a ritual. Eggs first, then oatmeal, not the sweetened packets, but real oats. Slow-cooked, warm, creamy, topped with chia seeds. At first, he doubted it, but 3 days in, he noticed something. The stiffness didn't last as long. By the end of the first week, the leg cramps that had haunted his sleep were gone. Then came the bananas. 1 in the morning after his walk. They weren't magic, but the potassium worked behind the scenes, quietly regulating his muscle function. Less twitching, more control. He didn't stumble, stepping off the curb anymore. Marlene watched it all unfold, like a slow, blooming miracle. The way David stood taller, walked steadier, talked about walking the full block again, about going back to the park. His voice, once quiet, cautious, had a rhythm again, a purpose, but there was more. Greek yogurt became his late morning fuel. High in protein, gentle on digestion. He added berries, cinnamon, a sprinkle of seeds. Each morning, his body was being fed what it truly needed. Not calories, not caffeine, but tools, real tools, to rebuild what time had been quietly taking away. Then came the sweet potatoes. He hadn't eaten them for breakfast in decades, but when Marlene served one warm, lightly salted with Celtic sea salt, something clicked. It wasn't just tasty, it was stabilizing. Slow-burning carbs for energy, magnesium for muscle relaxation, natural potassium to prevent cramps, and that unrefined sea salt, it delivered over 80 trace minerals to his cells, like sending reinforcements to a weakening army. By the end of the 2nd month, David wasn't just recovering, he was winning. His steps grew quicker, his balance steadier. The walk to the mailbox no longer required a handrail. When he stood from his favorite chair, he no longer pushed off with his hands. He simply stood, as he once did years ago, upright, strong, without hesitation. It wasn't a miracle. It was breakfast. It was a conscious decision to give his body what it needed before the day began. Not pills, not protein powders, not surgery or therapy, just food, humble, healing, and real. He began telling his neighbors, his brother in Florida, even the cashier at the grocery store, "Eat before 8, he'd say. Eggs, oats, banana, sweet potatoes, yogurt. Just try it. It's not a diet, it's a second chance." And they listened, some out of curiosity, others out of desperation. But as more tried it, they felt the change too. Small at first, then undeniable. One by one, they joined him on his morning walks. One by one, they stood a little taller. One by one, they took their lives back. David never expected his comeback to begin with something as simple as an egg, or that a warm bowl of oats could turn the tide, but it did. And now, every morning, as the sun rose and the kettle hissed and the eggs boiled gently in the pot, he knew his strength wasn't gone. It had just been waiting for breakfast. David no longer dreaded the mornings. Each dawn began with movement, slow, sure, sacred. A stretch of his arms, a quiet roll of the shoulders. He would press one foot firmly on the ground before standing, a ritual that once symbolized fear, now transformed into confidence. Marlene watched him closely from the kitchen doorway, holding her cup of tea, steam swirling like the warmth returning to their lives. "You're walking lighter these days," she said. David glanced down at his legs and smiled. "It feels like they remember how to work again," he said. "Not just walk, but move with purpose." The eggs were already boiling, the oatmeal bubbling gently. A banana sat beside the cutting board, waiting. The house smelled of cinnamon and morning. It wasn't just breakfast anymore, it was a declaration. That week, David decided to go to the community center. Not for therapy, not for help, just to walk, to move, to sit upright at a table and read the newspaper like he used to. There, he ran into Carl, same age, same neighborhood, but a different path. Carl limped slightly, his cane tapping the linoleum floor with each step. His posture bent, voice thin. "David?" Carl squinted. "You look younger." David chuckled. "That's what a few boiled eggs can do for you." Carl raised an eyebrow. "What kind of eggs you eating, man?" They sat, they locked, and for the first time, David shared everything. The science, the story, the food, the morning changes, the muscle loss statistics that nobody talks about. That shocking line about sarcopenia from the National Institute on Aging, how seniors could lose up to 33% of leg muscle in 10 years. Silently. No warning signs, no pain, just weakness. Slower strides, wobbling at the stairs, a missed step becoming a life sentence. And then came the truth bomb. "You know," David said, "it's not the age that makes you weak, it's what you don't feed." Carl leaned in. "What do you mean?" "Your legs," David answered. "They're hungry in the morning, not for coffee, not for toast, but for what they've been missing. Protein, minerals, fat, fiber, balance. That's what keeps you standing. That's what keeps you free." Carl blinked, and that's when David gave him the list. David's leg-strengthening morning regimen. 2 boiled eggs for leucine, D, B12, and myelin health. A warm bowl of oatmeal with chia seeds for beta-glucan, omega-3, magnesium, and steady energy. 1 banana for potassium and nerve-muscle communication. Half a cup of plain Greek yogurt for casein protein, calcium, gut support. Optional, steamed sweet potato with a sprinkle of Celtic sea salt for balanced electrolytes and slow, low-release energy. "Try it for a week," David said. "Then tell me if you still need that cane." Carl laughed. but he wrote it down. That night, David stood in the bathroom, looking at himself in the mirror. His face was the same, older, lined, wiser. But his stance had changed. His shoulders no longer sagged under invisible weight. His eyes had that familiar spark. He whispered to his reflection, "We're not done yet." Meanwhile, across town, Carl took that list to heart. He swapped his toast for oats, scrambled eggs instead of jam, cut back on the sugar, added in Greek yogurt, despite never liking it before. He even bought chia seeds, those bird food things, as he called them. And by day 4, something happened. He reached the kitchen without leaning on the counter. By day 7, he stood from his recliner without the armrest. By day 10, he walked to the mailbox and back. No cane, no stumble. His wife, Lorna, stood speechless. "You didn't tell me you were seeing a doctor," she said. He grinned. "I didn't. I just started eating like I wanted to walk again." Back in David's home, the transformation deepened. He started preparing meals the night before, steaming salmon, roasting sweet potatoes, measuring out yogurt, chopping berries. He had never been a health nut. But this wasn't about abs or six-packs. It was about staying upright, about keeping his freedom. He read more now, studies papers, senior health journals. He learned about how after 60, the stomach's acid levels drop, which means less absorption of B12 and protein. He learned about inflammation, the kind that creeps in unnoticed, slowly shutting down strength like rust on a hinge. And he learned this: almost every senior had the same issue, but nobody was talking about it. One morning, he stood in front of the community centre bulletin board and posted a handwritten note. "Want stronger legs after 60? Don't skip breakfast. Eggs, oats, banana, yogurt, sweet potato. Eat before 8 a.m. Change your life, David." He didn't expect anyone to care. But the next day, 2 new men joined his morning walk. The day after that, 5. By the end of the week, 10 seniors, men and women, stood in a small circle at the park trail entrance, holding hard-boiled eggs in napkins, trading oatmeal recipes like they were secrets. David called them the 8 a.m. Club. Each had a story. Marta, 72, couldn't play with her grandkids because of weak knees. Now, she was planning to take them to the zoo. Glenn, 68, used to wake up 5 times a night from cramps. Now, he slept straight through. Angela, 75, had fallen twice last year. She hadn't stumbled once since starting the regimen. 1 food, 1 habit, 1 morning. That's all it took to start the return. And the best part? They weren't relying on medication. They weren't trapped in rehab. They were taking back control with forks, not prescriptions. David stood one morning in the middle of the group and said something that would become their motto. "If you can stand, you can move. If you can move, you can live. But you have to feed the legs that carry you." They all repeated it. Again, louder. It echoed through the park like a war chant against weakness. And from that day on, no one skipped breakfast again. The air that morning was crisp, the kind of coolness that whispered of early spring and second chances. David stood beneath a tall oak in the city park, watching the group gather like clockwork. Some wore hoodies, some carried thermoses. All of them wore something new. A gait that didn't wobble. Legs that no longer asked for permission to move. Eyes no longer cast down in fear, but straight ahead, as if the ground beneath them belonged to them again. The 8 a.m. Club was no longer just a few curious walkers. It had grown into a movement. 27 members, all over the age of 60. Some had canes tucked under their arms. Others had grandkids holding their hands. One woman, Clara, 81, had brought her son, who marveled at her posture like she was a stranger. "Mom," he whispered, "you're taller." "No," she smiled. "I'm just standing up straight again." David clapped his hands once, a signal. Everyone circled up. "We meet each morning," he said, "not because we're trying to be athletes, but because we refuse to become prisoners in our own bodies. He held up a single boiled egg. This is not just breakfast. It's our rebellion. A chuckle ran through the group, but the truth hung in the air. The rebellion wasn't just against age. It was against assumptions that after 60, decline is inevitable. That weakness is natural. That independence has an expiration date. And then came the mail. Letters, dozens of them. One from Nebraska. Dear David, I'm 67, and after 1 week of your routine, I walked around my garden without holding onto the fence. Thank you for reminding me that I still can. One from Arizona. You saved my husband. He was wasting away. Now he races me to the mailbox. Another, scribbled in shaky cursive from a man in New Hampshire. I didn't think I had another season left. I was wrong. David read each one out loud under that oak tree, and then came the question that no one wanted to ask. But someone finally did. David, what happens if we stop? He looked around the circle, eyes waiting, legs still vulnerable beneath brave faces. If you stop, he said softly, the muscles forget. The balance fades. The body slips back into silence. He took a deep breath. But if you continue, just one meal, one moment, one choice each morning, your legs will carry you longer than you ever believed possible. He pointed toward the sunrise, now bleeding gold across the trees. And when the rest of the world is sleeping in, skipping breakfast, choosing coffee over calcium, toast over strength, you'll already be walking, already reclaiming what most people have already given up on. That's when the new routine began. At 7:30 a.m. sharp, the first bell would ring, not from a phone, not from an app, but from inside, a reminder that strength starts before sunrise. They'd begin with a glass of warm water and a pinch of mineral salt, rehydrating the muscles, refueling circulation. Then, one by one, they'd build their armor. The whole eggs, rich in leucine, vitamin D, and nerve support. The oatmeal with chia seeds, slow-burning energy, anti-inflammatory power, and balanced blood sugar. The banana, to re-establish the electric pulse of muscle. The Greek yogurt, restoring protein overnight, calm digestion and strength. The salmon and sweet potato combo, once a week to shield the muscles and joints like natural armor. And every step taken after that meal was easier, softer, steadier. That night, David sat by the window. The world outside was quiet. The light from the lamp painted his book with a warm hue, but he wasn't reading. He was reflecting. How strange, he thought. All the years he feared losing his legs, and yet the solution had been sitting on his plate all along. He took out a piece of paper and began to write. Not to himself, not even to the club, but to a stranger who might be watching this very video now. He wrote, Dear you, if you're reading this, if your legs feel heavy, if standing takes longer than it used to, if you dread the stairs, if you sit when you want to stand, I want you to know one thing. It's not too late. You haven't missed your chance. You haven't crossed some invisible line that says, from here, only decline. I'm 69 years old. I fell once, and I thought it was the beginning of the end. But it was just the beginning. And the beginning looked like a boiled egg, a bowl of oats, a warm sweet potato. You don't need a gym, or a doctor, or a miracle. You need a meal, a choice, a reason. So here's mine. I want to walk with my wife for as long as I can. I want to stand up from a chair without help. I want to be the one who lifts, not the one who's lifted. Find your reason. And tomorrow morning, just once, eat like you believe in your legs. Then do it again, and again, and again. And when someone asks you why you're standing taller, walking smoother, smiling more, you can tell them, I started eating breakfast. Sincerely, David. The screen fades to black. Then, one final message appears. White text on black. Strength doesn't disappear, it just waits to be remembered. Feed it. Cue soft, hopeful music. Then the last voiceover. If you're over 60 and your legs feel weaker, don't wait another morning. Try the 8 a.m. routine, and if this message helped you, pass it on. Someone else is still sitting, waiting to believe they can stand.